Good. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Media Competing for Attention and Space Amongst the Noise. The title is clunky, but it's going to be funky. Yeah. All right. You should never make the first joke as a panelist, but went all right. Hi, everybody. My name is Mikey Cahill. I've been a music journalist for 17 years now. I currently write for Hit Magazine, the Herald Sun, and news.com.au. A few other things. For the record, I detest Andrew Bolt. Let's get that out of the way. I've got some excellent Andrew Bolt anecdotes, which I can share with you after. You should come up and see me. Got some rippers. I'm today's moderately competent moderator. My questions won't be quite as good as Tony Jones, but also I'll be a little less smug. Frankly, I find it a bit sexist you're all here at media, blah, 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 and not at Hens in the Cockhouse. Hopefully we can push past this. The esteemed panel you see before you consists of, from the end, Bianca O'Neill, digital editor-in-chief, authentic entertainment founder of Alphabet Pony. She's at the pop end of the spectrum, also does an indie blog, and an example of a headline this morning on one of our sites. Our exclusive first look at the Katy Perry pop-up shop. What can I buy? What else is inside? Will Katy be there? We have all the answers. Jake Cleland is just next to me. He's the assistant editor of The Vine, writer for Pitchfork as well. He's been called Gen Y Anthony Carew by me just then. And many other things by DMA's fans. He's the self-appointed enfant terrible of Australian music journalist. Example of a recent headline of his story, one of his stories, Jessica Malboy doesn't need more funding, she needs better ideas. Very good yarn.
Which he stole from us, by the way.
Tim Scott, brother just here with a hat on, is the editor of Noisy, one of the many successful digital music ventures by Vice. He's been called the successor to Wally Meany's throne by me just then, and is a guy who has a finger on the pulse of music that's punk, garage, post-punk, post-garage, and anything with scuzz and buzz. He wrote a brilliant piece last year for Mess and Noise called Al Montfort, Unofficial Australian of the Year, and recently he wrote a piece called Is the Rompers Stomper soundtrack the best racist punk ever performed by non-racist session musicians?
And it is.
I think the mics, peeps, we'll make sure these mics are on for our gorgeous panelists.
Thankfully, mine's the only one that's working, so this hen in the cockhouse is going to get something good.
Scott Fitzsimmons as well, let's not forget. He's the head of digital for the music.com.au. They break great stories all the time with original angles. Scott's the guy who does a lot of the hard work, gathering votes and recommendations for the AMID Power 50, and is an all-round legend. So I'm really keen on this being a very interactive panel, so feel free. Constructive heckles are great. Hey, Nick, nice to see you. And we're going to learn a word today, rhizome. We'll get to that. And also we'll talk about page stickiness. So let's recap while we're all here, folks. There was a great quote from Neil Mann. He was asked when he was embedded with the Wall Street Journal, he said, what's our biggest competitor? He said, you tell me what's your biggest competitor. And they said, the New York Times, New York Post, Washington Post. He said, no, it's people's time. And we all know that. I mean, put up your hands here if you've checked Twitter and Facebook more than 5 times today. Yeah. See, we're all addicted to it, and that's the way we're getting our news these days, which is pretty cool. So there's that. I'm going to stop talking so much and throw to the panel now. The uptake of media consumption through smartphones and tablets is quite staggering, especially in Australia. We have one of the highest rates in the world of people being on their phones, finding the news that way. How are people coming to your various media platforms, and what's really hooking them in that you've found? Anybody can go.
Website is the main platform, I guess, but also social media. We, after publishing any kind of story, we either local content or content from the States or UK or one of our various other countries' sites, we will put them up on our Facebook and Twitter, and that drives a lot of traffic back to the website.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
That's the main one, yeah.
Mm.
I'm pretty segmented. 30% or 33% is straight to the music.com.au, 33% is through Google, and 33% is through social media, of which Facebook is by far and large the biggest driver for us. So I think what's getting people in is great content, being relevant and having something that anyone wants to read, and yeah, they're coming from all over the place at the moment. So you've really got to have those structures in place.
I guess it must be said that you know, although people, if they trust your brand, will come in via the homepage, or if you've got your SEO right, they're coming there via Google search. But it must be said that if you've got a really good piece of content, one of the best ways to bring people into your site is to share it on social media, because there's that sharing element, and you can reach people who've never even heard of you before. And that's probably the best way to, from a blog perspective, to grow. You know, that being said, you've also got to make sure that when you do share it on social media, that people have an incentive to click, because, you know, certainly on our pop culture sites, you know, Take 40, the hot hits, we see 100,000 people like something that's really popular, but we might not necessarily get 100,000 views out of that. So how are you converting your Facebook shared post to an actual click-through to the website to read the content?
It's very interesting, I find, and I'm probably sure you guys find it all as well. You're constantly fighting social media. Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook. You know, Twitter wants you to stay on Twitter. You know, their business model is having big user bases. So as soon as I'm trying to, you know, use my fans and my likes on that to drive them somewhere else, it's getting harder and harder to do that. And it's quite interesting talking to other people in the industry, and they've got really targeted social media campaigns. We have targeted social media campaigns as well, not necessarily that we pay for, but just quite heavily targeted. But they can sell concert tickets through Facebook or Twitter. They can sell their merch through Facebook or Twitter. We can't sell ads on our Facebook page, you know. So it's quite interesting, and social medias keep moving. Anyone who sort of comes up to me and is like, oh, I'm thinking of being a social media expert, it's like, you're just a wanker, mate. Because it moves so quickly that it's this week it's something, next week it's next thing. Facebook wants YouTube at the moment, so video uploaded straight to Facebook at the moment is key. I'm sure everyone here is seeing heaps more videos of cats running into skateboards and things, because that's the way the algorithm's working, but they'll get bored of that, and next week it'll be something else.
And look, I think there was about 6 months there when what happened next worked, but doesn't work anymore. And, you know, you're always going to get, especially if you're doing pop culture websites or an ironic website or a hipster website or pretty much any website, actually, depends on your audience. But we see a lot of people who, if we try and get people to click through in order to find out the answer to the question, they'll just post it in the comments, and those little fuckers. And so there's got to be more of a reason than just finding out a one-word answer to a question. And Facebook does, I believe, serve into the newsfeed according to bounce. So if someone clicks it, sees their answer in 2 seconds and comes back to Facebook, because obviously, you know, on mobile you view it within Facebook, they don't count that as immersive content, and will probably punish you in terms of how much you're fed into news feed. So it's not even as much just getting people to click, it's getting people to click and then buy into that content and want to read the whole article.
Just piss people off at the end of the day.
Jokey boy, the Vine does excellent numbers. What works and what doesn't?
Kim Kardashian.
Is that the answer for both?
Kate Upton and galleries.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and provocative headlines.
Mm-hmm. Is there such thing as too much of a provocative headline? Like, do you get... I certainly, when I go in and see something and then, as you say, either it's answered in one word or you think, well, they didn't really tell that lie, or, you know, I get a bit pissed and I don't like that website much anymore.
Yeah, well, that's just shit journalists doing a bad job. But, like, if you have a super provocative headline that's like, was Hitler the greatest thing to happen to Europe, or some insane thing like that, I mean, you're going to do massive traffic out of that, because everyone will be sharing it on Facebook like, oh, what a dick. Who does this person think they are? And, you know, your advertisers will be thanking you.
Absolutely. Something that's interested me lately, Tone Deaf, the way they do it, you can't like, you have to share. And that pisses me off, because I just want to like it, and I don't want it to be showing to, you know, everyone on my feed. What do you guys think about that?
I guess it comes down to, again, you know, social media, there's so many formats and platforms out there. You've kind of got to give people the option. Like, every website's got that little plus sign there when it drops down to 4,000 social media things, and you can box it or cube it and square it and triangle it and whatever else you need to do. But, I mean, from my experience, it is big on Facebook. out of that 30% of traffic we get from social media, 90% is Facebook, 5% is Twitter, you get Reddit, maybe 1 or 2 after that. Google Plus I think is actually in the minus. I think every time someone posts something on Google Plus, we get less hits. It's that bad. And these things, they come and they go, but at the moment it's those 2. It might change in the future, and then people will react to that. But it's just making it easy for people to do it.
From a blog perspective as well, like it's actually quite interesting to see that one of the biggest areas I've got followers is on Instagram, but trying to get people back to my blog from Instagram is like a nightmare. There's obviously no live link clicks within each post. The only live link that you can post in terms of just being able to click it is on your profile. So I have seen people change their profile with their latest post so that it's a clickable link. But I guess it's like trying to find the appropriate social media networks to promote your content that allow consumers to find it easy to get to your website from there.
And I think the key also is appealing to people's preconceived notions as much as possible, because the Facebook algorithm privileges anything that mentions keywords that it thinks are relevant to your interests. I think that's what they say anyway.
Spandex pants, for instance.
Yeah, well, Kim Kardashian, exactly. I mean, there are a lot of people who are talking about Kim Kardashian, so every time you post a story about Kim Kardashian, it's going to be seen by more people on Facebook than if you post something about spandex pants, because not many people share my enthusiasm for them.
Just while we're on trash, just quickly, let's talk about red food, because it's hard for any of us in this room to fathom people liking red food, but a lot of people that come to Hot 40 website, Take 40, they would love red food, and this would have been a hard week for them. How did all that go down?
Do you want to talk blog, or do you want to talk Take 40 and Hot Hits?
Take 40.
Look, on Take 40, we're a chart-focused website. So, and Take 40 and Hot Hits are places for fans to come. So I guess coverage of something like that is more about factual coverage rather than opinion coverage, because the people who would click on it for those websites are fans of Red Foo. So, there's more of that perspective of going, okay, this is what happened, here is what everyone else is saying, what do you think? But, that being said, then on my blog, I wrote about what a fuckwit he is. So it's
Factual.
just more about like tailoring your coverage to who your audience is. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with it, or you have to be like the only person who's going, actually Red Foo's awesome. It more means like, oh my God, how much does that suck? What he's saying isn't very good. Will you still buy his music? And it's asking those questions so that people will interact with us and say what they think.
Tim?
As far as our audience, people know that Red Foo is an idiot to begin with. So coming to somewhere like Noisy or Vice, we put something up this week that video that came out was offensive, but we put it at other reasons why it was offensive besides the misogyny and the sexism. Just saying it was a shit video, basically. There's breakdancing in it. Who breakdances at parties, basically?
Red Foo would breakdance at parties.
Yeah, he would.
He would do it.
Also, Mariah Carey had breakdances at her gig last week, so I assume that means that that's really relevant to
Mariah Carey
2014.
and Red Foo, they can...
That's
We're
we've
not
got to
that
Mariah
interested
Carey.
in it.
I'm sorry,
Take
everybody.
anything away from
How did
this
we get
panel,
there?
it's stories about breakdancing. You need to get on it.
Tim, you've come on fairly recently at Noisy. Tell us about, I guess, the biggest successes you've had online so far, and the stories that have done really, really well.
Well, I guess, because it's kind of weird, like Noisy also creates content too. We make videos, a lot more so in the States. We put on events. So our content is, published content, I guess, but we are also involved in creating music videos. ASAP Rocky did one a little while ago that became probably one of the most successful things we've done. But yeah, I guess, are you talking in the
Just stuff that you've done through Noisy that just has gone gangbusters, and you kind of go, oh wow, we just learned something about our audience just then.
yeah, the op-ed pieces work a lot. Like that Red Food story did pretty well. Yeah, just kind of those op-ed ones, I guess. Yeah.
Excellent. So the word we're going to learn today, ladies and gentlemen, rhizome, sometimes called a creeping rootstock. It's the stem of a plant that sends out roots and shoots as it spreads. In online features, of course, this is hyperlinks, this is GIFs, YouTube clips, all the other things that kind of keep you stuck on the page and the page stickiness. Do you guys think all stories now need to be rhizomatic, or is it sort of overload and you go like, I just want to read a story, I don't want to have all these annoying things pop up?
I think that would be awesome, but everyone would go broke. And there would be no Noisy or The Vine or Take 40 or anything.
Well, Take 40 is a radio show, so we're like told that we're secondary to the radio show. Us unimportant website people.
Sorry to talk over you, that was quite rude. What do you guys reckon? Are there too many hyperlinks now, or is it just that's the nature of the business? That's what's happening.
I think, like, it's weird to say, is there too many hyperlinks, because that's what the internet is. You know, it's a series of hyperlinks. I think as long as the story, whatever people came into that particular page or that site for, as long as it's there and it's clear, and you're not going to try and make people jump through hoops, that act of trying to get your page impressions up by doing, okay, here's the story, but you're going to have to read it here, but you're going to have to go here first and there, that's sort of dead. But as long as you've got that little bit in the middle that is very clear, it doesn't really matter what you do afterwards. I think like you can jam full of links, it won't work, you can do it. And there's smart ways to do it, and you just got to do what works for your audience. I have 30% of my traffic people wake up and they go to themusic.com.au, so I know that there's an audience for me that want to read other stuff on my website, and they'll come onto the website without necessarily needing a hook. So I just need to make what else is available, what else has been posted that day available to them, and they will find it. If I was running a website that relied on, this is the second best music panel you'll ever see, you won't believe what presenter 4 has to do, then that's in and out, and I have to write on my links and keep them on there by selling them bullshit continuously. But I don't do that, so I don't really know much about it.
I think it's also about obtrusiveness. So if your hyperlinks are obtrusive, then it ruins the experience for the reader. So, we've been experimenting with, there's two types. There's like within your own website hyperlinks, which obviously are going to benefit you. And I personally prefer to create a sentence out of those hyperlinks that's relevant to the story. So instead of going, blah, 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 Kim Kardashian's butt, and then putting a separate line like read more about Kim Kardashian's butt here. It's more saying like, da-da-da-da, Kim Kardashian's butt was amazing, and hyperlinking that part of the story rather than separating it out and making it obtrusive. It's in the article, it's relevant to the article, so always hyperlinking to things that are relevant. Hyperlinking out of your website, I mean, that's up to you, but personally, I prefer to give my readers more information, but obviously, if you're going to hyperlink out, make sure it opens another page so that they can always come back to you.
That actually brings up a really interesting point, what you're saying, read more then. We do, because we've got 4 print magazines around the country, we print 120,000 magazines a week. We've got a shitload of interviews. We post like 60, 65 interviews a week. So presenting them was a real challenge for us when we started the website. So what we'd do, we'd pick out, like post the first couple of paragraphs or something, or pick out something particularly good from the story and then put read more down the bottom. And it just didn't work. They wouldn't go off it. And we learned that it was just those 2 words, read more. If we did it in a recent interview with themusic.com.au, they'd click on that, but they wouldn't click on the read more. So it's about making it natural as well, and not trying to tell people what to do.
Very, very good. A band like Blue Juice got a free ride with Triple J for many, many years, in my opinion. They're not very good. And just because they were such good talent, they'd be great on radio, etc. Do you guys get pressure from any advertisers and from on high, stuff that you're not really that into? that you have to say, like, say Angus and Julia Stone was on Faster Louder, that rated really, really well. I think it got 80,000. It's not really, Faster Louder, you wouldn't really be talking up Angus and Julia Stone every day of the week, but the piece was beautiful. It was a long read. It scrolled down really well. Andrew P. Street's a top writer. Yeah, is there any pressure, sort of the powers that be, to say, hey, can we get a story on these guys?
I wouldn't say there's pressure. I guess a lot of the content that we run now, it's kind of competition trying to get people to the site is premieres, whether it's a music video, album stream, or just a track, original content. If you're working with a publicist or a record label who might have a number of acts on the label or who they work with, some good, some better than others, they may ask you to run a video or content from a band that you wouldn't normally run, but maybe later down the track you'll get to good stuff from the stronger bands on that label or that publicist.
Do you want to name names, Tim?
Won't name names.
Okay.
But
I
yeah.
think that's a good point. You know, like for the bigger sites, you know, obviously nowadays there's lots of advertorial, there's lots of native, there's lots of advertisers who are paying us to create this content in the end. So there's two types of pressure. There's the pressure from the sales team who are selling space in order for us to make this content. And then there's the pressure from, you know, if you're talking about music, from the labels. And that is to cover things that they see as a priority in order for you to get access to other artists. And so there's that really interesting situation where you will get a label come to you and say, hey, how about this interview? And you say, no, that's not right for our fan base. And they'll turn around and go, well, we can't give you time with this big artist unless you cover that artist. And for me, that's a lot more disturbing than putting a piece of advertorial up where you put at the top, hey, this was brought to you by Coca-Cola. Here's a great playlist for you to listen to. And I think the really scary thing with that label media relationship is that readers aren't aware of that. You don't put at the top of there, the label made us do this so that we could get access to this artist. So that to me is probably more concerning, but hey, everyone has a different opinion.
I mean, I think there absolutely is pressure, but it comes from everywhere. Because when you're onto a good thing, the advertisers want to be you, and they sort of like, oh, we just spent 20 grand on a campaign with you and you aren't giving us any love. But it works for the labels as well. It's like, I think this album's great, won't get any love. An indie band, you know, saying, I think I've made the best video in the world, won't you give me any love? And so it comes from everywhere, basically. It's just about managing that. And I don't know if anyone was here for the first panel that I moderated yesterday, but it's a business of relationships, no matter where you are in it. So those relationships are key. And I mean, like, there's times definitely where, you know, big promoters that have had, you know, campaigns that have got long history with them, and they'll come to me and they'll say, look, this tour's stiffing, it's not selling in Brisbane, I've got no more cash left, can you help me out? And I go, yeah, because we have a relationship, and I'm definitely, we'll figure something out. And my favourite one was always from the labels in the early days, where you get a rep coming in and going, look, I got this great album, and I got these 3 shit albums, like, help me out here, I got to meet budget, what the fuck can we do with these 3 records? And you go, oh, shit. I was like, I like you, and I like that record, and this is good, so we'll figure out a way to do it. And you work with people like that, so it's about managing those pressures.
Totally. Jakey boy?
Oh, man. Well, this is why I think we should get away from advertising as a funding model altogether. I think it's so destructive to be accountable to anyone but the people who are reading your site. I mean, not only do we feel pressure from advertisers now, we seek it out. That's what native advertising is. And I think the fact that as, I won't use the word content creator because I think it's so disgusting, as writers, the fact that we are writing ad copy in between writing stuff that we think is interesting to people is just an abomination and a total abrogation of our duties ostensibly as journalists.
A part of me says, yes, you're absolutely right, and I believe in what you say. Another part of me wants to yell at Park Life at the end of that.
I'll tell you that.
But let's talk about long reads. Bat for Lashes and Aphex Twin, incredible pieces in Pitchfork, where as you went into the Pitchfork page, you had to look at the Aphex Twin piece, which just went scroll, scroll, scroll. Just Not a very good album, but very good marketing. And recently, Lord, I know I keep bringing up Faster Ladder, but the Lord piece, I just had a word with the guys this morning for Faster Ladder, and they say it's still getting 10,000 organic views a month, and it's up to 250,000 views. That's their really long piece they did on Lord. Do you guys sort of see that as I guess the future, and do you have the resources and then the time to be able to send journalists off, or not necessarily send them off, but to sort of really, I guess, focus on great long reads, beautiful pieces which will live on in the internet for quite a long time?
Well, the thing is, I'm sure, Tim, you've got experience with this. Like, a lot of the content, the very cool and excellent content that Noisy does, it's usually presented by someone in addition to the publication, right? Like the ASAP Rocky thing you were talking about before. And I think there's sort of this attitude in the industry to say, well, like, thanks to that advertiser, they let us do this cool thing that we wanted to do. And if we didn't take advertising money, then yeah, that ASAP Rocky video never would have happened. If you were like, no, we just want to film it on our own, it probably wouldn't have happened. But I think if we can encourage a cultural shift where people are more willing to come to publications and pay their own money, then absolutely there'll be resources for that sort of thing.
Excellent.
I've got feelings about this one because I've just got lots of feelings. And if someone gave me a bottle of whiskey, you can hear all of them at once. It'd be fantastic. But like when the print started to implode, and then people, started to think, oh, this is dead, this is terrible. This is the end of long journalism. And I was like, no, it's not. We've still been doing it. We post 2 or 3 stories a week that are well over 2,000 words.
And Pitchfork have gone back to print, or they have print magazine now.
Yeah, and this isn't so much a topic about print, but it was there. Long journalism is there. When the internet started, it might have been shit. That's why no one was reading it. But it's still there. We're doing it. I remember talking to a magazine who folded, and I won't say which one, but they were they were government funded. Government funded, so you fill in the blanks, and they go, oh, it's such a shame. No one's doing long journalism. It's like, you had the money to do it. Why weren't you doing it? What's wrong with it? But like it's there, and it's good, and it just needs to be good. It needs to be interesting. No one wants to hear me write 3,000 words on dribble, but we were doing this series at the moment that going back 30, 20 years after an album, the day of release, talking about the context of that record and what it meant and how it looks 20 years back. We're doing long in-depth features. We don't send a press release every time we do one of them. We just do it. Some of them go well, some of them don't. What I was talking about before about finding an angle or a news angle within that story can help as well. But yeah, like it's the future, but it's also the present and it's also the past. And it won't be for everyone, but there's still people that want to read things. People still read books.
They do.
They're going to take the time to do it as long as it's good.
For me, there's a couple of things here. Like, I think that people who are saying that the internet is the end of good journalism are idiots, and they're not reading good sites, for one. For two, journalists want to write long-form articles. They want to sit down and really get into it and have the time to put that into original reporting, and that's the way you stand out online. There's a bazillion people talking about just reporting on Red Foo's video, but who's got an original angle and is doing original reporting about it? And they're the people who are going to stand out. They're the articles you're going to share. They're the articles you're going to comment on or want to read more about. And for me, like, on a technical level, long-form journalism does work online, but it also has to be structured correctly, and you have to allow people to take in the information as they go through in an ordered manner. And so you see a lot of people who are doing it these days breaking it up into separate headlines, pagination, all that kind of stuff. So, that being said, it also needs to be structured correctly, because people find it difficult, I think, online to really commit to sitting there and scrolling all the way down as well. So
it's odd. It's almost like one of the first rules of journalism, when you would type out a page and then print it out, and you'd actually lay out the page, and you'd have to make your story such that you could finish at every paragraph, because if there wasn't enough space, they just cut paragraphs from the bottom. And I think the internet got stuck into the habit of writing stories that were like a week after blah, 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 this, and, you know, with the closure of this, and then blah, 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 and blah, 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 and it just takes the fourth paragraph to get the point. It's like, dudes, I'm out. I'm gone. I'm sorry. So, it's those same rules apply.
Yep.
Get information if people are still keen. More like, when I do big examinations, I do a lot of the industry reporting on festivals and, you know, streaming services, and they're big stories. I'll put dot points at the top. Something as simple as that to go, these are the 5 key points. Anything is quite data heavy, so like annual reports of music industry revenue and that sort of stuff, you put the key facts at the top, and people that are interested will keep reading and find the analysis.
And that's catering to different readers. You know, some readers just want the information in the first paragraph because they're time poor. Some people want to sit down and ingest it and really look at it. So how can you create long-form journalism that appeals to both someone who just wants the paragraph of the key points and someone who literally has half an hour to sit there and read through the whole thing?
Scott, the music.com.au don't seem to do much long read, don't do many long reads as far as I know, or do you guys?
No, we do.
Okay, there you go.
What sort of long reads? Because we've got reviews and interviews. Our Brisbane editor, Steve Bell, is an absolute gun at that sort of stuff. And for too long, probably, he was caught up in databases and, you know, emails and that sort of stuff. We've actually unleashed him onto the world fairly recently, and we have 2 or 3 stories a week go up that are over the 2,000 word mark. We had Skyhawks ones, Midnight Oil ones. There's one that went up on Friday. I haven't actually a chance to read yet. You know, big interviews with people like Steve Kilby and the Church, you know. But like, we're not going to sit here with a band on their first EP and interview them, you know, write 7,000 words on them. But we do it for news as well. You know, those big stories that I just kind of mentioned that are long because there's a lot of information about them. We do it, and we've always done it, and we still do it. And we're not the only ones that do it. But it's just, you know, when you send a press release to announce you're going to start writing long stories again, it's like, guys, come on.
Another quote from Neil Mann, who I just think is incredible. He's on Twitter, by the way, @FieldProducer. You won't regret following him. He says, "Print is the gangrenous arm of media that needs to be cut off." He said it a few weeks ago to a bunch of News Corp heads and nearly came to blows in a South Bank bar. But he kind of had a point. They accused him of having a terrorist beard. It all kind of kicked off. With the music.com.au and other, I guess, put this out to all you guys, do you think we should just get rid of print media in music?
No, absolutely not.
Same here, but I just want to try to be contentious.
The day that we close our print magazines is the day that the whole thing goes under. Last year we reevaluated all our magazines. We had 4 different mastheads around the country, and it was getting a little bit confusing. We had the biggest investment in print media that the company, that Street Press Australia has ever made, by rebranding, making them smaller magazines, actually putting more words in by doing a complete revamp inside, making them full colour, full gloss. It costs us more now to print magazines than it did back then. But by doing that, we actually stabilised that side of the business. It's still, you know, we are the biggest employer of freelance journalists and photographers in the country. We run more stories than everyone in the country, and without the print side of the business, that just wouldn't be possible. I'm very mindful of the fact that my job as the head of digital now is to create growth in the digital space, because it will grow quicker than the print side will. But yeah, no, I think it's very, very lazy and self-promoting for Twitter journalists to go out and say print's dead.
Look, I think there's also a point to be made here, and that is that people still pay for a magazine and pay for a newspaper, and they ain't paying to look at a website. People have tried, and it ain't working. So in the end, print needs to survive in order for us to show people that journalism, good journalism, is worth money, and you need to pay for it in some way, shape or form. And, you know, to Jake's point, if we're going to convince people to pay for websites, then we need to keep print alive in order to show them why those two things shouldn't be mutually exclusive. I mean, it's the same argument as people saying, oh, now that MP3s are here, let's just kill off all physical music. Vinyl's seen a resurgence, people still want merch. They're not two things that are going to kill each other off. So I don't really understand. It's a different audience, you know. Some people want to buy something and have it physically, and some people don't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the reasons that when we did enter the digital space, we were potentially better set up than other people were is because we don't have a cost price on our magazines. The AIMED Power 50 is the only thing we put a cost price on. So we already had the models in place to create great content without asking for anything from the reader. So when it came to the internet, the same rule applied. And we thought about, long and hard, do we keep some stuff for the magazine? Do we put it online? And we toured around with a few different models. And it was like, no, just put it everywhere, Get it out, people read it, and people start talking about it, they share it, and that's how you grow.
Yeah, but print doesn't make people value journalism. People buy print stuff because that's how they like to read that stuff. And I love print. I think it will never die. I think for some publications it makes more sense to shutter their print stuff, like Spin did a couple years ago. But you look at a publication like Lifted Brow, who I haven't seen their finances or anything, but I assume they're doing pretty well because they've been going for a while. I think, if anything, the insistence on keeping print around because it'll teach people to value online journalism or journalism in general is almost a destructive idea. I think it would be much better to kill off print in a sense and say, you should be paying for these things. And Bianca, you're right. Paywalls haven't been massively successful for the people who have tried them. But I look at those as casualties, I guess, in an inevitable cultural shift.
New York Times paywall's doing really well. I know I work for the Herald Sun, but I have heard that they're actually doing quite well as well through the paywall. Not incredibly well, but enough people sign up for all the extra bonus things you get, like, you get a deliver for free, you get your real footy or your super coach stats at half time, like just all those little things that they can throw into the package that makes people go, well, maybe $3.99 a week I can do.
It's an interesting argument that managing directors and boards around the world are saying now. We've got, say you're a super big news website and you're getting 10 million hits a week or a month, and then you getting, X amount of advertising dollars. By putting a paywall up, you cut that down to 2% of what you had, but you're still making more money. So it's that offset, and I think each company needs to make that decision by themselves.
I think where we are right now, people are just sort of confused about how to put a dollar value on something intangible. So, with music, we've seen the vinyl resurgence, which is, to me, evidence of the fact that people love paying for stuff that they like, but they just don't know how to do it if they don't have something to hold on their hand. So they might have a band that they really want to support, and they just want to chuck them $20. And so the vinyl is, or the tapes, or whatever, all these analog formats that are sort of coming back, they are a compromise in a society that hasn't figured out how to value intangible things.
Nice, pertinent. We should chuck it or sort of open it up a bit more to bands and artists and how they approach, I guess, us on this side. What's a really good pitch from a band? What's an original approach? What sort of piques your interest and makes you go, I want to write a story about these guys?
I'm a 4-piece rock band from Brooklyn, New York.
That was easy.
3-piece okay too, yeah. Things haven't changed. You've got to write good songs and be a good musician first of all, and having SoundCloud and all that stuff is great too. But yeah, it comes down what we produce, quality content. If you don't have it, you're going to struggle from the outset.
Well, Tim, I think you're probably the most influential guy in the Australian underground, probably. I've heard it said before by other people. And there are quite a few bands who have been indie successful that you've been on pretty early. And out of curiosity, when you say you've got to make good music, you've got to be a good musician, what do you mean? What was it about I don't know, Will and Kits or Bitch Prefect or something like that, which made you think this is good?
I guess for those bands, like Royal Headache, Bitch Prefect, Total Control, these bands that have made a big impact in a short amount of time, is they were kind of doing a very unique and original idea of not idea, it's rock and roll music, but they weren't following any particular scene or style at the time. And at the beginning, they struggled. They weren't an overnight sensation, a lot of these bands. They maintained their kind of direction and the kind of music they wanted to do. And to be honest, a lot of those bands are pretty crappy when it comes to self-promotion. They're not media savvy. They're garage bands.
Mikey Young pulling teeth to do a good interview.
Yeah. But
with all due respect.
But yeah, I guess, and sometimes in many ways, the less kind of kind of pro, I guess you are. You don't have a publicist, and you don't have the kind of crazy PR, media kit. For me, I'm interested in that. Like, not everybody on this panel would probably be into the kind of stuff that I'm into, but as a writer and as an editor, I kind of like to champion and support and encourage these bands who are kind of dumb when it comes to marketing themselves.
I think it's finding the right place for your music. I can't tell you how many people send my blog, email address, a SoundCloud link, and they open with, "Oh, hi, I'm a death metal band from Alabama. Do you want to cover me on Alphabet Pony?" And I'm like, have you read my blog? Because there's no death metal on it. So, they're going to see that maybe as a failure, but it's just the wrong place for their music. And nothing that they do could convince me to cover it because it's just not my kind of music. So it's about knowing the place that you're pitching to, for one. And for two, I can't tell you how many times I've been sent an email from a band or from a publicist that says, "Hey, so this band's awesome." They write like an essay about why they're so awesome, and there's not one link in the entire email. It could literally be, for me, just, "Hi, we're this band, we make this kind of music, here's a link, let us know if you're keen."
Just do your research, basically.
Sorry?
Just people do your research, Scott?
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because obviously with Alphabet Pony and Noisy and things there, you've got your little niches and you work really well in those communities. We're a little bit different because we like to think we work with the music community as a whole. So particularly with the website now, we were able to give opportunities to people that we just literally didn't have space for in print magazines, and do video premieres and do album streams and interview their records that we wouldn't. For me, because I'm sort of running things nationally, I rely on the state editors and the state writers to sort of feed stuff back to me. Like all our exes are dominating Sydney at the moment, and Sunbeam Sound Machine, you need to see them when they come up to Sydney for the first time. That's how I sort of find out these things. So it's very much a business of relationships. And, I know that can sound daunting sometimes. You're at a conference and you don't really know anyone, but you're here now, so you should be building those relationships and coming up and grabbing people like the panelists here and building those relationships straight away so that we recognise a name when it comes through in the email. But if you are cold calling something, it's pretty much what Bianca said, being clear and concise and having, I love dot points. I love accurate dot points at the start so that if you're flicking through, you can sign and see 4-piece, this sort of band, played here, this is what we're doing, this is our schedule for the next year. You kind of go, okay, I know everything I need to know. I don't need to read a bio that's going to tell me.
Imagery as well really helps.
Strong image.
Yeah, but compressed images in inboxes. No fucking big attachments, please.
100 kilobyte.
Dropbox.
One last thing that I think doesn't get mentioned too much, but something that's really worked for me, as someone who despises reading press releases in general, tweet at me. Like, a lot of bands follow me on Twitter. And like, I just have conversations with them, and I think if you don't live near me and you can't come and track me down at a bar or something, which would be the best way to get in my face if you're not a dick, then just like have a conversation with me on Twitter. That would be nice. We're both people. We can talk about stuff.
Direct line. We've got time for about...
So you mentioned bribes before, I think, when we were talking just before.
I don't know whether I got offered a bribe 3 days ago. It was quite something. And I said no. Yeah, it was quite... I was taken aback.
I've never been offered a bribe. I think it's because I'm not important enough, so...
I haven't, but I do accept them, so...
Depends on the pricing.
Time for 10 minutes of bribes. 10 minutes of bribes. Okay. 10 minutes of questions? Don't be shy. Byron from Collarts. Just shout it out, son.
As journalists, how aware are you of your personal brands?
Personal brand is one of the most disgusting terms I've ever heard, and I think we should do away with it fucking immediately.
Okay. How aware are you of your egos?
Very.
Immensely.
Evidently.
It took me like 40 minutes standing in front of the mirror to put this together.
I blog my outfit every day, so I've got a very healthy ego. But in terms of personal brand, I think that's a really interesting question. I mean, as a blogger, it's incredibly important because, you know, I think you are your blog and you should be your blog. So who I am as a person, as a journalist, as a music lover, you know, as a person who gets dressed every morning, everything that goes on my blog is something that I have personally chosen and personally recommended, and I don't take any advertising, so anything that's up there is my choice. It's very different for when I go to work and I'm editor across Take 40 and Hot Hits. I don't matter, the brand matters. So it's a completely different type of thought process. So
I'm very much the same. I mean, I don't think I have a personal brand personally. I have Twitter and I use it for steam trains, whiskey and endurance motorsport. Like very rarely anything music is on there.
Steam trains.
I don't attach anything to my thing, and that's because when I launched the music and it was about the masthead, we used the staff writer a lot as a general rule, unless you've done an interview with someone or you've gone and get quotes for a story or you're putting an opinion. I'm sorry, mate, you don't get to claim that one. Go and do some work, then you can put your name on something. Some people do, and that's, you know, you were saying about Twitter before, that's a good way to approach it. It'd be the worst way to approach me through Twitter, because I don't check it, because I've got the music.com.au Twitter, and I've got other Twitter accounts around the country that are specialised. That would be the way to approach the company as a masthead. And I think that gives longevity to the brand as the music.com.au long after they've fired me.
Nice.
Just one more thing. Sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to cut you off. Love you. Yeah, I just want to maybe end on a more positive note. Don't be a personal brand. Just like be a compassionate, nice human being who is easy to talk to. I think that's a lot better. Being a personal brand, you don't have to worry about selling yourself, okay? Because everyone else will sell you for you. Like the way that everything is so free these days is because they are selling our attention to advertisers. It's the attention economy. Look it up. That is that pretty much takes the decision out of your hands. You know, you don't need to be a personal brand because everyone else will brand you for you. So just be a person. Cut through all that bullshit. It sucks. It makes me feel bad.
Let's not get bogged down in brand semantics either. Next question. Anybody? Lee? Would you like
guy
to?
in the orange t-shirt who wanted to ask a question before.
Don't be shy, people. Your beautiful hair.
Hey, like, do you like it if someone comes to you with something already sort of pre-prepared, like a story sort of ready to go, or close to? Is that something you would
As a
run
band
with?
or?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, for a band or an artist, yeah.
No.
No.
We got so many freelancers, we commission everything ourselves. We obviously don't run press releases and band bios. We also don't run pieces from journalists, interviews they may have done by themselves that they're submitting to us. And that can also get a little bit dangerous sometimes when someone you've never heard of comes to you with a story. Like you don't even read them, you go back straight away, don't even open the attachment because I've probably already commissioned one, and if our journalist has asked the same question and then old mate sees it on the site, then there's can be all sorts of legal ramifications. So we just don't do it.
You don't accept any pictures from any
We
writers?
accept pictures.
Right.
If someone's got an idea and they want to come to us, like, I'm thinking of, or I've done this interview, this is what it's about, would you be interested in running this story? I'd look at the idea,
Right.
but fully fledged pieces, no. So I don't know, I haven't touched this. I've got a brand, you know. I don't know who this person is. I don't know. There's you know, fact checking. I'm not a blog. I've got to stand by what I put up on my site. You know, I don't need to be sued any more times than I do already.
Got steam trains to run.
Steam train mafia.
So an idea though is a good thing to run with. Like if we come to you with an idea, it's better than coming and saying, "Oh, write something about
You
us."
could- yeah, fresh ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about content before, etc. Like a fresh idea is a fresh idea, and if you're a great writer, that'll pop out at people, and you know, we'll employ you.
Awesome.
Even,
Cool.
even
Thanks.
if you've already got the piece written, don't send that. Send the idea first.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Biddy.
Okay, now I've got the mic. Just from the point of view of imagery, what's sort of working at the moment as far as, I guess, like live shots? Obviously, the pre-prepared band promo shot is huge, and we love it in print media. But it's just as far as documentary, behind the scenes, is that sort of a thriving thing?
Behind the scenes, I'll answer the first part of your question.
Yeah.
I think what's underrated is a great etch, a good high-res shot, which can be etched, so you can be popping out of the page. It's something every single week I have to find good etches for my pages. And it's a good dynamic shot. It's not a shot of the back of someone's head looking out at a crowd of 10,000, which might be great for the band, but it's just a terrible, terrible shot to put on, on a page or online. In terms of behind-the-scenes stuff,
Like photo galleries, you mean, on an image type
I mean,
sense?
documenting a band. In
Yeah,
their
yeah,
day-to-day life,
we embed photographers with bands. We've done it with Blitz and Esso and Hilltop Hoods and that sort of thing, across the last 12 months. Festivals as well. We tend to do behind the scene things, and it's the quality of the content. It's having a really good photographer, and those sort of jobs are something I give to my cream of the crop photographers, because they know how to work people and they know how to create that shot and frame it and get people to do what they want to do. I think it is actually a little bit underrated, but yeah, no, we do it, and I think it's going to be more and more of it. I think the panel earlier today, there was a big emphasis on how visual music's becoming and how it's becoming such a big part of branding and a big part of putting together music. So, we're reacting to that. We're following those trends, and it's tour diaries are great for us as well. Even when we can't embed a photographer, like European tours and that sort of thing. I'm more, when I tell a band, we want to do this, don't give me 6,000 words and 6 pictures. Give me 10 pictures and 600 words.
just on that too, Marcus Teague was lucky enough to be handpicked by Lars Ulrich from Metallica to sort of go and be embedded with them on the Melbourne tour. And he wrote 6,500 words, and it was a fantastic piece, great shots. And 2 weeks later, he wrote a piece on top 11 everyday chocolate bars, and it rated 6 times as much as the other one. The latest stats on that, though, is Metallica's 28,000 views, and everyday chocolate bars 80K.
And Mikey, what website are those published on?
That's the Vine, I believe, Jake Cleland.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's the depressing part of being an online journalist.
Hey, enough of the downer, bro.
Yeah, but I think it's like there's definitely the clickbait thing, something you haven't really touched on. But it's it's there, and it's a part of it, and you've got to do that sometimes to get a story that perhaps isn't that exciting. You've always got to. It's headlines. It's always been the art of headlines, getting people to read it. I see it a lot in music, but I honestly believe that music deserves a little bit more than just clickbait headlines. Particularly with some of my industry stuff, instead of writing a story that is about Shepherd or Vance Joy going, this Australian band is probably going to be the biggest band in the States. No, we've written 60 stories on tracking them through the charts and actually selling that story better. And I feel like I'd be doing an injustice to my audience, who I feel are industry, but also music fans that want to see a little bit behind that curtain and want to be a little bit more informed. If I don't do them that justice and try and flick them off with the clickbait headline, then I'm just like everyone else.
And then you can follow it up with top 11 chocolate bars that Shepherd like.
Well, I think we could do like the top 10, 11 stories about Shepherd that I wrote that you didn't read, but now you're going to go back and search them.
Very good. Talking about clickbait, is something like the last 2 days, Lord sticking up for Tay-Tay when Diplo made that derogatory comment about her butt, that has just gone gangbusters online. Is that clickbait, or is that a good modern story? And he's got a good feminist angle. Is Lord sticking up for Taylor Swift against Diplo a good story?
I don't know if it's clickbait necessarily, at least not by BuzzFeed's recent definition, but I think it's stupid and not news. I think this trend towards reporting on what artists are tweeting is really dumb. Like the fact that Pitchfork is just like glued to Grimes' Twitter feed when she's repeatedly told them not to because she finds it really hurtful is like kind of disgusting behavior, I think.
Well, look, it depends on your audience, though.
No, it doesn't.
It does,
I think it
because
does.
if you've got an audience that is invested in these artists, they want to read about that. And in the end, sure, it's great to be snobby about oh, I only cover high-end journalism. But in the end, if people want to read about it, then why not cover it?
I think by definition, you've just summed it up. if it wasn't news and people didn't care, it wouldn't have been trending. Like, I don't report on that stuff. I don't write anything about Kim Kardashian or whatever that thing was that I've already forgotten. But Lord or something. I report on Lord, just not on whatever that was. But the fact that people did read about it, saying, well, there's a market for it and people care. You know, who am I to sit up here and tell them that, no, you can't read that. You know, that's not worthy of you. It's like, what sort of wanker am I? You know, if they want it, and then someone else will do it. I think that's a lot what happened with some of the daily papers when they had their big drops. There was Mikey's company were comparatively quite okay compared to the other one, because they got up on their high horse and they said, no, you're going to buy our papers and we're going to tell you what's important. And the audience just went, no, you're a wanker.
And then to that point, you know, you can use that as an opportunity to then discuss that further with your audience. So, you know, every stupid story is an opportunity to then talk about something serious, like, you know, should that have been said? Is that sexism? Is there a sexism problem in, you know, music? All that kind of stuff. So that's a spot that you can sit down and go, okay, I'm going to get them there through this story, but what else can we talk about once they're there?
About extrapolating. We can extrapolate more, but we have to finish now, ladies and gentlemen. Come and see us later on, chat with us. Give it up for Bianca O'Neill, Scott Fitzsimmons and his steam train, Tim Scott, and Jake Cleland, for being Mikey. Thank you very, very much.